Hi everyone and welcome back to Edo's Backstage. I know it's been a while, more than a year since the last video. I am really sorry, I feel really bad, but look, in this 2020 I had big plans for this channel, but then the COVID came, the lockdown, the uncertainty, the false restart. I promise, soon in a new video I will tell you everything that has happened in this past year. Today we will talk about something still very current, and that is the endless battle between digital and analog. Many have already expressed their views on this subject. I'm not the first one to think about it, but it seemed to me the perfect time for doing it, because it's clear that digital is on the rise. New discoveries, technologies, new processors, but above all, new products. And the companies that pioneered digital technology today are becoming leaders in the amp sector. And even the companies that are famous for their valve amps today are starting to turn and invest in the digital world because they understand where the trend is going. And yet, there are still those who do not intend to give up. There are those who continue to prefer the analog world, the real amplifiers, the real speakers, stomp-boxes, and some will never give up, and that's great. There is nothing wrong with wanting to remain faithful to a certain habit or passion, doctrine, religion, because we are getting to these levels. There are people who argue over this topic. With this video then, I want to analyze benefits and disadvantages in both cases, because frankly in this debate there is no right or wrong in theory. Because then when I hear the detractors of digital telling me that analog sounds better just because it is analog, it's obvious that they're wrong. It doesn't make any sense. We must instead understand what the strengths are, and we must understand when it is appropriate to make compromises and maybe sacrifice something for the benefit of something else. I hope this video piques your interest. I hope to open up some debate below in the comment, but please, if you discuss, do it with respect, because we're all musicians and we're all driven by the same passion. Let's start by saying that I have been using digital steadily for more than 10 years now. But of course, for years and years, I have used heads, speakers, lots of stomp-boxes, of which I own still a nice collection, switches, loopers, MIDI pedal boards, and I've used all of this in combination with digital multi-effects too. So trust me when I say that I speak with some experience or with some knowledge. All this gear has supported me through concerts, studio sessions, lectures, seminars, demonstrations, and so on. I loved and still love that feeling of power that makes walls shaking, but that is something that today is no longer part of the philosophy of modern productions. And to explain the reason behind this, I'm gonna tell you about my own experience. Very often, since we had the opportunity to listen to recordings of our gigs, I realized that that feeling involved only me who was in front of the cabinet, and that both in the audience, when it was a big concert, as in the recording, the sound that came out of the system was quite different from what I was hearing in my own ears. It was losing those features that I loved so much. My tone was losing those cosmetic connotations I had spent so much time on during the developing process at home. I went to talk to the sound engineer, asking him, "Hey, what about my bottom end?"
I know, but I had to cut you up to 100 because it was too bassy.
"Fine, what about the top end?"
I low-passed you at 7K because you were clashing with strings, synth, cymbals.
Alright, fine, but I had a stereo delay.
Yeah, I know, but I only had a 57 available.
Oh, okay. What can you do? He's right, 100%. Unfortunately, in most situations, not exactly professional, but also semi-professional, where maybe there is an audio rental, but there is no pre-production, there's no coordination. Sometimes you find yourself in these conditions. And this was one of the reasons that prompted me to take the next step, to start exploring the digital world, to open up my mind to that eventuality. Also, I'm the kind of person who, if there is a certain sound that I'm aiming for which I need a certain pedal, I'll buy that pedal. Then, if I need 20 sounds and 6 different pedals, I'll buy all 6 of them. So, add and add and add. It happened that I have found myself buried in stuff that I needed some help to carry all that stuff. Anyway, earlier on I invited you to contextualize because it is important to understand that these points can vary as the situation changes. Let's try to divide this into 3 different scenarios: studio, concert, like in a club or in a theatre, and then tours with large production, so stadiums, arenas, theatres, doesn't matter. It goes without saying that in the studio, most of the time when they call you, more or less you know what kind of part they are asking for, so you also have an idea, more or less, of the sound you will need. So you don't need to carry everything, you will carry the things you want to use, so the weight problem is a relative problem. In fact, most of the time the studios already have amps and speakers. And why is that? Because in the studio usually there are always the same engineers who have been working for a long time with the same amps, the same speakers in combinations with the same microphones, and they will know how to direct you to get the sound they want or they want you to have. So, unless you can impose your own sound, some adaptability, some flexibility would be much appreciated. Also, they can't really expect you to have the 75 vintage amp or the 72 spring reverb, right? So in that case, they know they will have to supply at least part of the gear. On the other hand, showing up with an Axe-Fx or a Kemper would give you the capability to cover a much more complete range of sounds. So if you don't know what to expect before a particular session, having a digital setup is a good advantage. But in general, I also use other alternatives, always digital. For example, on my own record or on my own songs, I work with Amplitude or Guitar Rig. And why is that? Well, because usually when I have time to work on my own things, I'm in my dressing room and my Axe-Fx is on stage, so either I take the spare or I have to find an alternative. And since I am very lazy, I choose a sound card and plugins. And I can assure you, I get functional and very high quality sound. So much so that most of the time I am not even reamping. But then again, with the plugin, the reamp operation is so easy. You have a clean guitar on track, you just edit the plugin and the sound changes in real time. You can experiment, remix, all in real time, and this is an incredible convenience. Anyway, let's go back to the studio situation, and let's suppose that the producer knows you because you've already worked together, and let's say he appreciates your sound and your setup, and he gives you complete freedom, and he will let you use whatever gear you want. During the session, a valve breaks. Who cares? No big deal. You change it. It takes 10 minutes, so you take a break and you change the tube. And it's twin because that's the way you do it. And you're good to go. But during a concert, even in a club or a pub, and a valve breaks, well, that's what God invented blasphemy and profanity for. Because, guys, wasting 20 minutes on a gig is a disaster. First of all, you have to understand that a valve has broken. Because if you're out for a gig, you will probably have brought all the gear with you, each pedal to cover every single sound of the concert, so it will also take time to identify the problem. Because it's not like it explodes or it starts beeping to show you which piece is broken, therefore time is gonna be wasted. Yeah mate, but I play AC/DC and I go with guitar, amp, speaker and that's it. Well, okay then, probably there you understand immediately what the problem is. It's either a cable or it's the amp. So you change the valve, you swear a little and that's it. But it's obvious that you must always be prepared, carrying spare parts with you and your tools, because you know, it's never gonna happen. You think it's never gonna happen. But what if it does? On big tours, With big production, if it's chosen to use tube amps and to rely on analog, there are technicians taking care of constant maintenance of the equipment and who are there to give you assistance. And despite that, the production will also need to include and consider spare units to be used in case of emergency. What I am saying is that analog nowadays no longer offers you a superior quality in terms of sound compared to digital, and when it does, usually there isn't such a noticeable difference that justifies all the extra work and costs that the choice would require. And it is a fact that most big productions and pros are making the switch to digital. But let's go back to the analog rig. The more complex the setup, the more possibility there will be for failure. If it's not a valve, it could be a pedal, a power supply, a battery, a cable, a connection. And the higher the number of machines, the higher will be the number of connections, cables and welds. So in case of failure, you will find yourself having to identify the problem before you can fix it. Whether in a situation like mine, with digital, the machine either works or just doesn't. And in most cases where I have had the problem, we switched the power off and on again and the problem was gone. The only problems I've had that happened more than once during a tour are due to the guitars. Indeed, on the guitar, in reality, it was always the same. If you're interested in this, let me know in the comments, then I'll make a video about all the things that have gone wrong. But basically this is one of the main reasons that pushed me and the production to make the choice to go 100% digital. Another fundamental aspect is the noise. You may have the most sheltered setup in the world, but the more elements you have, the more cables you'll have to use, and the more cables you have, the more susceptible you are to hums and buzzes. Now, in Italy or in Europe, buzzing is not a big problem. But in America, oh guys, it's a nightmare. It is terrible, there is no escape. If you don't have a totally isolated power system and a Faraday cage, it could be very, very bad. And I'm not kidding, can get the police radio. Sometimes even with the XFX, it still buzzes. Although it only happens with some very distorted sound and only with certain guitars, but still. There are so many aspects that together make a huge difference, and again, now the quality is no longer a factor because we have reached a level of simulation that cannot be distinguished from the real deal. Anyone who tells me I can feel the difference between analog and digital doesn't know what he's talking about. By now 99% of the concerts that we go and see are based on digital desks, so you can have all the amps and microphones in the world, but the sound that comes out of the system has been digitally converted at least twice. So what are we talking about? In the studio, maybe it can still make sense to go analog because you can use some very high quality microphones, you can also use more than one combined, so you can really appreciate every nuance of the sound, if the engineer is good. But those are microphones that cannot be used live, and on stage playing along with bass, drums or other amps, the choice of microphone is very limited. It's a choice that will force you to deal with too many things that will not depend on the guitarist. The type of microphone, positioning on the cone, the proximity of other instruments, too many things. Now I'm gonna play two audio clips taken from the same concert by two different guitarists. One is with a mic and the other one is digital. Obviously professional production, multi-track recording, 96 kHz, super qualified engineer. This is the analog. This is digital. So, which one of the two is the easiest to deal with? So again, what are you saying? You're biased? Well, no, absolutely not. Because if somebody called me tomorrow to go for a jam session at a pub or to have a rock jam with friends, I will bring an amp and a cab and 2 pedals. I mean, for a gig with friends, I'm not programming 70 sounds on an Axe-Fx, it would be a waste of time. Also, in small venues with a small sound system, overloading it with too much stuff, vocals, keyboards and even guitars, it's not exactly ideal. So if I have to rely only on my speaker, I might as well bring an amp, it is easier. So it really is a practical matter. My choice is purely dictated by a cost-benefit ratio, where the cost is given by maintenance and by the time I have to spend at home programming. But the benefits include reliability and quality, where in my opinion, except in very rare cases, the digital after all is superior in the context where I find myself operating. In a production like Brit Floyd, where we have a huge repertoire and a huge amount of sounds to cover, how could we possibly have managed using analog? It would not make sense at all. When I started studying Brit Floyd material in 2015, they sent me multi-tracks from several tours they had recorded over the years. And it was clear when Bobby, the other guitarist, was playing with an Axe-Fx and when he was using an amp with 2 microphones. Good sounds in both cases, but if you talk about quality, well, digital wins, easily. And if it's about high fidelity, it wins hands down. Anyway, I went too long, as always, but there are so many things to be said about such a beautiful, substantial subject. It is fine if everyone remains on their own idea, but it's also important to understand that both solutions have their pros and cons. And as the digital technology develops, if there is still a gap given by the feeling or the dynamic response, this will get thinner and thinner until sooner or later it will be zero. But maybe we are there already. In any case, you don't have to use one or the other system because I say so, or because anyone else tells you to. Always use your head and your ears. Follow your taste and your passion. The fundamental thing is to have fun and to have an excuse and an opportunity to pick up an instrument and play. I thank you very much for joining me in this video and see you next time on Edo's Backstage.